Do you feel how do you feel about that? Do you feel a little guilty?
Okay,
Like,
what I meant, no, listen, I don't feel guilty because what I meant about that is I feel like the tattoo means nothing if you're out cheating on me. Like, what does the tattoo mean in that case? It's not significant. Like, you're out here cheating on me, you don't obviously care about me. That's my point. Like,
how do you feel about that, Speed?
First of all, let me come forward with this. I have never cheated on Dream, man. See, what have I done? It's called getting your. What have I done? I did some things that try to get my mind off, but I have not cheated. I have not did any things with a girl. I haven't done anything like with the fucking girl. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I had to get my mind off things, and I probably did some things, but it's not cheating though. It's I don't count that as I don't count that as cheating. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to come forward with it like live on stream because they probably gonna like look at me like different type shit.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't really I don't count it as cheating, but she counts that as cheating. But it's still fucked up. How the way she said it still doesn't mean shit. Cause this is permanent on my fucking body. I can't.
Okay, I understand.
I can't do shit without this. And you taking this like this fucking tattoo as a fucking joke. So it doesn't really make sense for my being.
You know, hold on. You know that I genuinely love you, and you play games with me all day, like I'm a joke.
You love. So do you guys love each other?
Yes, I love him.
Okay, now love is a very strong word.
I know it is.
Speed, do you love her?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. That means you guys very strong emotion.
I make sure that he knows that I love him, and he knows what I'm talking about.
Okay. Aside from that, now let's get into the facts. A few days ago, Speed mom walks into the room.
Mm-hmm.
Says you cannot be having different type of girls in this house 24/7. Dream reacts mad because, you know, as every human would be. Like, you feel me? Like, that sounds kind of crazy. Speed, can you explain, like, what's the thing on that? Like, did you have somebody in the house? Like, be honest. Be honest.
Yeah. I mean, like, I did. You know what I'm saying? I
And
can't. I'm not finna just up here and fucking lie like I damn, bro. Yes, I did. I sure did. You know what I'm saying?
So that's not cheating to you?
Can I? Hey, I can't hear you, man.
Who was this girl to you? Who was she? Be honest. I read body language, so I know off the rip.
All right. Fuck it. All right. Like dead ass. All right, dead ass. All right.
Dead ass.
Before I was doing YouTube, right? Like obviously I went to a school. You know what I'm saying? Obviously I went to a fucking school. You know what I'm saying? And this is a girl that I've known from school. That I wanted to set her up on a blind date with Marcus. I still haven't even been able to do that yet. I wanted to set her up on a blind date with Marcus. So obviously I brung her over. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we didn't. I swear to God, I didn't touch her. I didn't.
You didn't used to talk to her or nothing.
No.
Did y'all talk in the past?
No.
Okay. Nah. You didn't touch her.
No.
Strictly blind date material.
Yeah. I just wanted to like see what she was like. She was up to it. I wanted to put her on with my boy. You feel me? Like I already got me a girl, right? You know what I'm saying? So I want to put her on with my boy. You feel me? Like it ain't like.
Now, Dream. Do you know this girl or no?
No, I don't know her.
Okay. Okay. All right. And what? So like, content-wise, if you wanted to bring a girl to the house, do you not like that?
No.
I feel like I wouldn't care. No.
No. I mean, no.
I wouldn't care.
Be honest.
I wouldn't care if you told me.
You wouldn't care if he had told you.
Yes. You can't be secretive about things. Like you have to tell me what's going on, or else I'm gonna assume.
But since it was behind your back, that's what made you feel a type of way.
Yes.
Okay. I see. Okay. I'm looking at both sides right now. I understand where both of y'all coming from. Will say Speed is a content creator. That's his job. That's what he does. If you want to set people up on a blind date, he be doing that. Then again, Dream, I know you're human. You have emotions. You feel what I'm saying? Things might spark. You don't want to hear nothing off the thing. I just want you to take into consideration mentally that Speed is a content creator. And like, you feel what I'm saying? Now look, here, we can squash this right now. Look. In this future, Speed, if there's a girl that you want to do a content with, oh, hit up Dream. Hey, Dream, I have a girl coming over right now for some content, just letting you know. That's it. You feel what I'm saying? And now look, Dream, he made a mistake. He messed up. You feel what I'm saying? Like, it's for him to learn and grow from, okay?
Right. And I know, I understand, like, how it is to, like, be in your first, like, actual, like, I mean, he's been in relationships, but, like, not, like, a real good relationship.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, when it comes to your first relationship, it's your learning one. You feel what I'm saying? So look, now look, about to hit up with some more things. There was a missing condom. Okay? There was a missing condom.
And I can
hold on, one mic. Let me just go ahead and finish this off. I'm gonna let Dream take the mic first on this one, okay? So look.
I don't wanna. Alright, just keep on, never mind.
Okay. There was a missing condom. Where's did that come in? What's the thing on that?
Now.
No, I was talking.
Shut the fuck. Yeah. I know.
Hey, Speed, I know you're dealing. You feel what I'm saying? Chill out.
He gets too mad sometimes.
I know, and that's fine. He's working. Are you working on that, Speed? Have you been going to?
Just go, Gary, go ahead.
Okay. Look, Dream has the floors. Dream. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was at his house when I first saw the box of condoms, and they like came in, like he door dashed them, right? And I was wondering why
you door dashed.
Marcus has door. Marcus was over in my house and she door dashed.
It's always Marcus.
Wait, you could door dash condoms?
Yeah, you can. Marcus, from Walgreens, CVS.
Okay.
Marcus door dashed the condoms here for him. Okay. All right, I think it was
no.
Actually, no. Marcus door dashed the condoms for me. Yes, he was, but he was there the day before.
No, he wasn't.
Marcus door dashed the condoms for me because obviously I was about to lose my V card, but obviously she came up. Then the day after Marcus came in, he was like, "Yo, bro, let me get a condom," and I was like, "Okay." He took the condom. He I swear to God, not right now, like on my dime. Marcus took the condom, and for him own self, and he can vouch that. He could probably show the condom right now, to be honest. You feel me? He doored that, so you get it. He doored that the condoms for me. Then the day after, he came over and took the condom. One condom, only one condom. I have multiple in here.
You have the rest?
Yes, I do. Proof right here,
okay.
man. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Okay. And it was three in one pack, and he took one. Obviously, what I could have done, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't cheat. I probably could have beaten my shit with the condom. You know what I'm saying? I probably haven't even cheated. You know what I'm saying? So I could have did multiple things with the condom. Obviously, I didn't go ahead and have things with another girl. You feel me?
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and I understand that.
Okay. And how do you feel about that, Dream? Is that something that you want to go past? Like, you understand that already?
I feel like we can move past it because I can't just keep saying he did if he swears he didn't do it. And I'm having trust in him still. Like,
okay.
I'm a very forgiving person as well. So like, I try to hear his side of the story too. And he wants to lie and tell y'all it's always about me, but it's really not.
Okay. Now we're gonna go into a little intermission, so to calm you guys down mentally, because I know you guys are heated right now. So let me go ahead and pull up some pictures real quick, all right?
Okay.
Now, here's picture number 1. I just want you guys to tell me what you see one by one. Let me know what you see one by one. Hold on, the glare is in my thing. Hey, Speed, what do you see? What is this on your
Okay. America's new defense tech.
With the Holy Grail of Investing podcast.
AI is going to change.
You can turn it on for just the pixels you want to, when you want to. So maybe only in certain apps. So you can have it only block out your banking app and your texting app. Or even only black out incoming notifications, which is incredible. This is a genuinely useful innovation. It's special that it's actually a new hardware feature, which we really don't get that often in the smartphone world these days. But, like I said, everything is a trade-off. The way they pulled this off is they essentially have 2 types of pixels on this new display. Wide-angle pixels that you can view from everywhere, and narrow-angle pixels that seem to have some type of focusing lens on them, so you can only see them from straight on. So when you're just using the phone like normal, all the pixels are on. But when you decide to turn on the privacy display, it simply turns off the wide-angle pixels, and it leaves only the narrow-angle pixels. So you achieve that privacy filter effect, but now that also means you just turned off half the pixels. So your resolution is actually quite literally cut in half. And you can actually see it. Like there's blockier edges around text and smaller details and fine contrast. Here, I literally bought a microscope for this. So this is privacy display off, like normal. And this is privacy display on. You can see those pixels literally turning off. So yes, less resolution, and also yes, peak brightness is a bit lower. You normally don't notice that because they cleverly adjust the output of the pixels that are staying on to keep the perceived brightness about the same, but if you're at a high enough brightness, you will actually see it get a little dimmer when you turn the feature on. And even in regular use, that means this display is slightly worse all the time. I mean, think about it. If you've added a narrow focusing lens to half of your pixels, that means that your viewing angles are going to be slightly worse all the time because half of these pixels now have permanently poor viewing angles. It also appears to have a different coating on the display that's not quite as good at the anti-reflective thing that was so good on S25 Ultra. And it also turns out it's still an 8-bit display simulating 10-bit color instead of a full native 10-bit display like so many others have added. But I think that Samsung knows that most people are not pixel peepers. Like even on this display, this is a 1440p screen, but out the box, it's set to 1080p by default for everyone because they assume that most people would rather have the slightly longer battery life as a trade-off over like a perfect screen. So nerds like me will lock in and immediately switch to 1440p in the settings right out the box, and we will notice more the slight resolution differences and viewing angle differences, and we'll upvote every comment on Reddit that chastises Samsung for using the 8-bit display again. But at the end of the day, this is the trade-off that they decided to make to have this one really cool feature that they probably believe will sell more phones. But to be totally clear, this is still a really good display. But like I said, if you're a pixel peeper like me, just know what you're getting into, because there are better looking displays that you can get for your $1,300, ironically probably also manufactured by Samsung. But if that's your number one priority, there's other places you can look. Also, subscribe for more phones under microscopes. Here's another trade-off. This new design. And it's not even really that new of a design. They just made the phone a little thinner, a little lighter, and a little rounder at the corners to make it look like the rest of the flagship phones that they make. But even that comes with downsides. Like, since the corners are more round, that means the part where the S Pen goes into the phone is capped with a slight curve instead of totally flat. So now the S Pen can only go back into this phone this one way, unlike last year where it was flat, and so you didn't really have to think about that at all. Also, since the camera bump is now a camera plateau with rings on top of it, it's bigger, which combined with a slightly thinner body means this phone rocks viciously on a table when I'm trying to type with no case. I'm sure most people just throw a D-brand case on it and call it a day, but yeah, it's not nothing. And switching back to aluminum sides from titanium honestly makes no real difference to using the phone, but it does mean people will be able to make fun of you for copying the iPhone's titanium for no reason. The new chip is the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy. So I benchmarked it against the OnePlus 15, which is a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. Similar scores, slightly higher actually for the Samsung version, but still right around the yearly 20 to 30% CPU improvements expected. Really, Samsung seems to be much more focused on NPU, which is around the AI generating features on the phone, which we'll get to in a second. We'll get there. But yeah, the performance is generally, it's great. It's almost a formality at this point. Hey, are animations smooth? Yup. Can it handle heavy multitasking and gaming? Yup. The redesigned vapor chamber with less volume inside the phone is doing just fine. And battery life is actually slightly better, despite having the same 5,000 milliamp hour battery again, because the chip and software are a bit more efficient. Standby time still not quite as magical as some of its competitors, but it's really good battery life, and this phone charges slightly faster at a peak 60 watts now. I do have to say though, and if you're a subscriber, you probably know exactly where I'm about to go with this. No Qi 2 magnets? That seems like it would have been a no-brainer, and I know you want to sell lots of cases with magnets in them, Samsung, but wouldn't you also want to maybe win an MVP Phone of the Year award too?
Right.
And then no silicon carbon battery, which, you know, I know you've had battery scares in the past, but wouldn't you want to be eligible for a Most Improved award too? I think a phone that isn't slightly thinner, but that does have more battery and magnets built in would have been pretty universally appreciated. I'm just saying. Mr. Who's the Boss, Aaron, he just did his battery test that highlights the slightly better battery life of S26 Ultra over the last gen, but it also kind of shows it getting dunked on by some silicon carbon battery phones from last year. At this point, it's not surprising that they're still playing it safe here, but it's also still kind of frustrating because it feels like the ceiling for this phone could have been so much higher, so much more Ultra. These cameras are mostly the same as last year, but I think that actually undersells how good they are. There's a bigger aperture on the main camera. The 3X is about the same, and then a bigger aperture on the 5X as well. So both of these cameras let more light in and get all the benefits that come with that, including slightly softer bokeh with close-up subjects. And as a photographer, I feel like I'm always going to take the faster lens when I can get it. The minimum focus distance, though, on the main camera definitely...
Oh my goodness. Got a fucking allergic reaction.
It got worse. So I don't know if that's a direct trade-off. There is still macro mode, but I did notice that downgrade from the main camera. Not a disaster, but just something to notice. The more noticeable camera changes, though, are actually the ones enabled by software. So the APV log codec was added. It works great. They also added this super aggressive stabilization feature called Horizon Lock, and it's not the first time we've seen it, but it is one of the best executions we've seen of it. It takes advantage of this huge 200 megapixel sensor and crops in to shoot ridiculously stable, still quad HD video up to 60 frames per second. It's pretty sick. In general, video footage with this slightly wider aperture on the main camera look good. All of the talking head footage on the latest autofocus episode with the Polestar 4 was shot on this S26 Ultra, so if you want to look at way more footage from this phone, I'll link that below the like button. The rest of what's new on S26 Ultra could be described as software. It's a word you could use. Slop is another word I could use. The word Samsung would probably like me to use is agentic, but nah. There's a ton of AI features crammed into this phone now, ranging from call screening, which is very welcome and very useful for screening unknown numbers, to audio eraser, which does a good job of pretty naturally removing a good amount of background noise in videos, all the way to photo assist, which lets you edit photos to create entirely new scenes that never actually happened. It's a lot, and you can scroll through the Galaxy AI tab on this phone and see a lot of the new stuff in here. I think, honestly, take it or leave it. Like, you can choose to use as much of it as you want. You can go full slot mode and use all of it all the time, or you can kind of just never use any of it. I will say, I didn't get Now Nudge to work once, and I also tried many things with the AI text-based photo editor, and to its credit, it refused many of the things I tried to make it do. So, you know, yay for safeguards, I guess. I'm just not convinced any of this is a reason to buy this phone, especially when a lot of it could, and probably should, make its way to other Samsung devices across the lineup, older stuff, through a software update. So then lastly, while I have your attention, I would just like to take this opportunity to say that the base S26 and S26 Plus are not good deals anymore. Like, those phones feel like afterthoughts. The designs are basically unchanged, fine, but they've also had basically the same cameras since S23. They got rid of millimeter wave. It's also an Exynos chip in a lot of regions outside of the US, and they got rid of the 128 gig version, which I think is good, but they just kept the 256 gig at the same price. So that just means the price of entry is higher. It's now $900 baseline. You can get a lot more phone for $900, but Samsung doesn't really seem to care. Just wanted to put that out there. while I had you. You probably have to vote with your wallets to get Samsung to actually do anything. You know, this S26 Ultra is $1,300 starting, so it's also very pricey, but I can at least say it's a really good phone with some clever new features. I just think the price is probably the most ultra thing about this phone. You know? Like, it's a big phone, sure, and it's got ultra-ish cameras and chip, but aside from that, this feels like a S26 Plus Pro Max. Does that make sense? But it doesn't have a super advanced new silicon carbon battery or super fast charging or wireless charging, and it also doesn't have magnets, and they still don't have Bluetooth in the S Pen, but they do have one super cool, very advanced one-of-one feature that is in no other smartphone, and that's the trade-off that they bet on. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, man.
Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
That's not really an upgrade, to be real. I mean, it is an upgrade, but it's like, bro, is that upgrade worth it? I don't know if that upgrade is worth it, bro. Saving College Sports Roundtable. Yeah, I want to see this.
My seatmate from the Senate, who came on to be the 44th president of the United States, Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, President Barack Obama.
It's good to be home. I love you back. The book of Isaiah.
4 more years, huh?
Where are you at? Now, see, I believe in the Constitution. The book of Isaiah God is looking for a messenger to guide a hardened and resistant people. And the Lord asks, whom shall I send? And who will go with us? To which Isaiah replies, here I am, Lord. Send me. To Mother Jackson and the Jackson family, to President and Mrs. Biden, President and Secretary Clinton, Vice President Harris, Pastor Dates, my old friend, though he looking good, Reverend Meeks, Reverend Jenkins. It is an honor to join you today to celebrate the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, a man who, when the poor and the dispossessed needed a champion, and the country needed healing, stepped forward again and again and again and said, send me. Reverend Jackson's immense gifts were apparent at an early age, even if his circumstances conspired to try to hold him back. born out of wedlock to a teenage mom. Growing up under the oppressive cloud of segregation, confined to schools, sports facilities, movie theaters that were separate and unequal. It was a world where on Thanksgiving he'd have to wait for his mother to come home on the bus carrying leftovers from the dinner she had to cook for somebody else. A world designed to tell a child that he or she could only go so far. That to think otherwise would be foolish or dangerous. And that wisdom required you to accept your lot in life. Young Jesse refused to accept that verdict. He was a born leader, an athlete, a talker, knew how to talk, star quarterback, student body president. He could have succeeded within the confines that were determined for him and had a successful life. But like so many of his generation, so many extraordinary civil rights leaders in the late 50s and 60s, that Joshua generation, he instinctively understood that individual success meant nothing unless everybody was free. So he became inspired by the bus boycotts in Montgomery. He led 7 black students into the whites-only library, sitting down and getting arrested for reading. Think about that. The library closed, but then it reopened. And when it did, it was open to everyone. Send me, Jesse said, even as a young man, and the world got a little bit better. By the time Reverend Jackson graduated from college, he had attended Chicago Theological Seminary. He knew the nature of his calling, and he became, as everybody knows, the youngest member of SCLC, assigned to lead Operation Breadbasket here in Chicago, right around the time that Isaiah Thomas is talking about it. And it was during this period, and especially after Dr. King's death, when the optimism of the early movement had begun to fade, and leadership had begun to fracture, and when the country seemed to have grown bored, gotten weary of the idea of justice and equality, and moved on to other concerns, that Reverend Jackson rose above despair and kept that righteous flame alive. Through Operation Push, he led boycotts and challenged corporate policies around hiring and contracting, recognizing that civil rights without economic justice was an empty promise. He backed unions in their organizing efforts and activists in fair wage campaigns, understanding that if the have-nots and the have-little bits ever learn to make common cause across racial lines instead of fighting each other over breadcrumbs, everybody would benefit. He helped register millions of voters. He fought against biases in the criminal justice system. He drew attention to local abuses of power and called folks at the national level to account. And by the early 80s, he was delivering that message of change and hope across the globe, freeing hostages from captivity, fighting to end apartheid in South Africa. And then, 1984, as the powers that be in Washington were rolling back hard-won progress, slashing the social safety net, when more and more folks were getting left behind, and greed was being trumpeted as a virtue. See, we've been there before. He stepped forward once again and said, "Send me." He ran for the presidency of the United States of America. I had just graduated from college during that first campaign. And I was living in New York at the time. I was working to pay off my student loans, eating a lot of tuna fish and camel soup. And if I went to a diner, you know, I'd grab some extra crackers, put them in my pocket. And I was inspired by the civil rights movement. And I had in my mind to work for social justice. But even though I was full of good intentions, I was uncertain of how to serve and fighting off self-doubt. And I remember how, at the time, plenty of people, including, plenty of black folks, were dismissing Jesse's chances. Suggesting, oh, he just wants attention, he can only get black votes. But then I remember one night sitting in my janky apartment, and I got an old black and white TV with the rabbit ears, and I'm kind of jiggering around, and it's about this big. I know young people can't imagine TV was about this big. And I'm watching the Democratic primary debate between him and Walter Mondale and Gary Hart. And I remember how
I'm getting fucked up.
when that debate was over, I turned off that TV and I thought the same thing that I know a lot of people thought that night, even if they didn't want to admit it. That in his ideas, in his platform, in his analysis, in his intelligence, in his insight, Jesse hadn't just held his own. He had owned that stage. He wasn't an intruder. He wasn't a pretender. He belonged on that stage. And the message he sent to a 22-year-old child of a single mother with a funny name, an outsider, was that maybe there wasn't any place, any room where we didn't belong. And that message, fairness, dignity, justice, and hope, that's what the Rainbow Coalition was all about. In 1984, and then again in 1988. Jesse didn't just speak to black folks, he spoke to white folks and Latinos and Asian Americans and the first Americans. He spoke to family farmers and environmentalists. He spoke to gay rights activists when nobody was talking to gay rights activists and blue-collar workers. And he gave them the same message, that they mattered, that their voices and their votes counted. He invited them to believe. He invited us to believe in our own power to change America for the better. By the delegate count, just these two candidacies ultimately came up short. But he paved the road for so many others to follow. Doug Wilder became the first elected black governor. Carol Moseley Braun went to the U.S. Senate. Because of Jesse, the Democratic Party changed its rules, ending the winner-take-all distribution of delegates during presidential primaries, which meant underdogs and outsiders like Bill Clinton or Bernie Sanders could stay competitive and build momentum instead of getting knocked out early. And it was because of that path that he had laid, because of his courage, his audacity, that 2 decades later, a young black senator from Chicago's South Side would even be taken seriously as a candidate for the presidential nomination. I still credit that first run of Jesse's and Harold Washington's campaign for drawing me to Chicago. And I didn't know anybody when I first arrived. And I was working as a community organizer, as it so happens, in neighborhoods right around here. Roseland, Woodlawn, Altgill, West Pullman, and I'm meeting these young preachers like Meeks and some crazy priest named Flager. And I guess Jenkins was running around, but he's kind of young. He came a little bit later, so I'm going to churches and I'm listening to all these amazing preachers and it was hard work, and half the time I didn't know what I was doing, and progress was slow, and I definitely didn't know how I was going to survive these Chicago winters, because I grew up in Hawaii. But I do remember heading to the Push headquarters some Saturday mornings to listen and learn from Reverend Jackson. And y'all remember how on some mornings, if there was a major issue going on, the room would be packed to the rafters. And sometimes some celebrity just wanders in. And then some mornings it was kind of low-key. Either way, though, the announcements would be made, and Reverend Barrow would say a prayer, and just he'd sit there, and then finally he'd gather himself up and stand, and he'd start kind of slow. And sometimes he'd talk kind of low, so you couldn't quite catch what he was saying. So everybody lean in. And over time, that same boundless energy that would emerge, and that same passion and that same insight. And he'd offer you a master class in economics on a Saturday morning. And he'd give you a seminar in American history and American politics. And he'd make complicated things plain. And he'd tell stories that would make you laugh one minute and cry the next. And whether you were a bus driver or a teacher or a business leader or a young organizer, you came away from those meetings with a better understanding of how the world worked, how power worked. And more importantly, he made you believe that if we came together, we could make the world work better. Now, we've been talking about Jesse telling us we are somebody. I am somebody. And he wasn't just talking to young black boys like Isaiah, though he loved them fiercely. He wasn't just talking to young black girls to help them believe, though he believed in them. He was talking about everyone who was left out, everyone who was forgotten, everyone who was unseen, everyone who was unheard. And in that sense, he was expressing the very essence of what our democracy should be. The ideals at the very heart of the American experiment. The belief that regardless of what we look like or how we worship, regardless of where our ancestors come from or how much money we got, we're all part of the American family. We're all endowed with the same inalienable rights to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We're all obligated to answer the call and step forward and take responsibility for making wrongs right and for caring for our neighbors and bringing the reality of America a step closer to its glorious ideals. And answering that call isn't always easy. And Reverend Jackson and his family knew that better than most. To do what he did, he would endure all kinds of hatred and setbacks and betrayals and doubters and death threats. He would sacrifice, as Jim Reynolds pointed out, the leisure and comfort of what was available to him as a far more financially secure life. And those sacrifices were not his alone. They were shared by his wife and his children. And they bore that burden with grace and strength. I got to know the Reverend and his family over the years, and as I watched his children follow his example of service, I came to appreciate the conviction that drove him, that he had passed on, the faith that guided him and that he had passed on. You know,
Dario, who runs Anthropic, he's very, very worried. And a lot of people think you've created the god, but I think the right way to look at it, this is a very important industrial revolution.
Please welcome to the stage co-founder and Palantir, Joe Lonsdale.
Today, my partner and co-host Christopher Zook's going to sit down with one of the greatest entrepreneurs of this generation. That says a lot, I know. But he's someone who doesn't just talk about the future, he's actually building it.
We were pretty horrified that our country was under attack, and the FBI spent tens of billions of dollars on stuff that was 20, 30 years behind Silicon Valley. Before I left the company, we hunted down 9,000 terrorists.
Wow, let that sink in for just a second. How do AI, defense, space, energy fit together in a strategic landscape?
There's 6 levels, 0 through 5. These levels are all interesting to invest in. I happen to think level 5 is the best risk reward.
It's tough to invest in defense because you don't know that the revenue is going to be there.
We shot down military drones 9.5 times farther away. The generals were applauding, and it was a big deal. And then the next year, we basically got almost no revenue. And I found out.
Give us what you're most optimistic about in the next decade.
Every one of our challenges that we face, there's really good answers that come.
And what we cannot afford to get wrong.
One big part of that is we can't afford not to fix them.
Our guest is none other than Joe Lonsdale, the co-founder of Palantir, one of the most influential companies in the modern world. Joe's also co-founded and backed category-defining businesses like OpenGov, Saronic, and Anduril, companies that are reshaping finance, government, defense, and technology itself. But I think what makes Joe different isn't just what he's built. It's really how he thinks. He thinks long-term, he uses first principles, and he's relentlessly focused on real-world impact. If you want insight into how the most powerful platforms of the next decade are being created today, this episode will expand how you see the opportunities ahead. Let's meet Joe Lonsdale.
It's a bigger crowd than I realized.
It is a big crowd. We're very proud of that, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you for making the time. I'm going to put up on the screen, just so that everybody has a little bit of history. I'm not going to read you all of this.
Sorry about this.
Okay? No, you should be very proud of it. But it would take way too long to introduce him. But as a co-founder of Palantir, obviously a lot of you know that company, as being involved in some of the most innovative companies that exist on the planet. We wanted to put them up here, as well as some other things that we'll talk about, including the University of Texas of Austin, which he is a co-founder.
That's true.
University of Austin. I said it again, didn't I?
University of Austin. I actually started all of these except for Erebor. Palmer started Erebor, but I'm backing him.
Got it.
So.
You're with him.
They did a big thing where they put my face next to his on. Probably thought that I did it, but it was not mine.
That is okay. Yeah. So Joe has got obviously an incredibly varied background. So I could take this conversation like 1,000 different directions, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to try to stay really refined on a couple of things. The first of which is AI. You have a very unique perspective, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Sure. But what I'd love for you to do is let's talk about what the myths are in AI. Let's talk about, kind of what's real and what's not. Go with that one.
What's real and what's not. I was on, I suggest, I was on the Zoom with Dario, who runs Anthropic today. If you guys haven't read his latest piece, I think it's actually a very good piece. He and I we differ politically, but he's a really obviously smart guy. It's one of the top 3 labs. He's raising at $350 billion. And he's really very worried. And I agree with him about some of the things he's worried about. I think what's not real, at least to me in my view of the world, is I don't think this is like an existential thing that changes our entire civilization, where we've created, and a lot of people think you've created a god, basically, or we will create a god in the next several years. And to me, that's very unlikely. I think it does change a lot. I think it's very, very important how it changes the whole world. But I think a lot of people, especially in Silicon Valley, they don't really have the same maybe religious tradition that we have here more often in Texas, and so a lot of them, this has become their religion, where they think this is like a whole new change in the entire world, and everything's going to be different. You've created a god who's going to run things, and I think that's not the right way to look at it. I think the right way to look at it as investors and as citizens is this is a very important industrial revolution. So I think productivity is definitely going to go up a lot. Right, the last time productivity grew this fast was probably the second industrial revolution, which is 1870 to 1900. If you take a typical person in America, the median wealth, median income, it more than doubled in that less than 1 generation, basically. So you basically had people, I think, almost 2.5 times as wealthy. It was very, very good for America. It was really awesome. It was a lot of change, right? A lot of jobs that existed in the 1860s and 70s did not exist by 1900. You don't have Coopers anymore. We have our last names as Coopers or Smiths or Bowyers or whatever, but you don't have the jobs, and you have a ton of these jobs go away, and that's going to be similar now. There's about $5 trillion today in wages in the services industries, and already $2 trillion worth of wages. So already 40% of our entire service industry, we've seen examples of being able to double the productivity. So it's in some cases triple or quadruple. In some cases, we've already bought companies 2 years ago that we've already tripled their cash flow in certain areas, right? So there's a lot of stuff already happening where productivity is 100% real. It's going to change a lot of things, in a lot of positive ways, hopefully. But I don't buy the whole existential thing.
Well, it's interesting because, by the way, you thought I talk fast? He talks pretty fast. Right? So
I'll slow down.
No, that's okay. You be you, and they'll keep up. Yeah. And we're going to cover a lot of ground here. So what I will say is that the ability to think through what it is that truly is investable and what is not, and what AI is going to be. I mean, it's funny because Christopher and I were working on an agent that I've been working with ChatGPT on, and I was being pretty firm with it because you're trying to train your agent, right?
Yeah.
So I was correcting it, And Christopher thought maybe I was being a little bit harsh. He goes, they're going to kill you first.
They come back and get you. I don't know.
Maybe I might want that.
These things don't have very good memory yet, so and I think they delete the logs. And when we think about, if I may, on AI, I think that for how to invest in it, we're computer scientists. We start counting from 0, and so I think there's 0 through 5. There's 6 levels. Level 0 is energy, which is great for Texas, by the way. I think there's going to be a lot of energy that we need. Whenever you hang out with these guys who run these companies, they were admitting to me they're not even telling how much they think they're going to need because they don't want to scare their investors. So you're going to need a lot of energy, and then level 1 is the chips companies. Right now, NVIDIA dominates that with Intel and AMD. That's over 99%, but there's a lot of new chips companies too. They're interesting. Level 2 is data centers. All of our friends have been investing in that. It's been a great alternative asset class for a very long time. It's very hard to measure how much you need, but that's obviously a big thing now. Level 3 is the model companies themselves. That's Anthropic, OpenAI, xAI, Gemini, Meta, Chinese models. And those are obviously very interesting companies, growing faster than anything we've seen before. A lot of people say, what part's going to be commoditized, what part is going to not? That's a big question. Level 4 is the software infrastructure. These are the companies that help you deploy AI no matter who you are. So it's something like Databricks for organizing your database and infrastructure, something like Palantir, of course, which has been playing a key role there. It's Olama, which helps you deploy models. So lots of stuff there. And then finally, level 5, the last level, is the actual apps and services themselves. It's the companies actually creating value directly in the economy, actually enabling things to happen. And so there's all these levels are all interesting to invest in. I happen to think level 5 is the best risk reward, but they're all pretty good right now.
Okay, so just because you went through them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So 5 is basically the companies that are helping companies do better.
Or even doing it themselves.
Or even doing it themselves.
So this is a big difference in this wave. Historically, you would build a software company to help a services company deliver value. Most of the time now, we're just building a services company ourselves because there's a lot of really deep integration with the operations and the software for who does what, and over time you just get better at it. It's much harder if you just give that to someone else. It's much easier to own it. So for example, in logistics on the back end, when you send something, there's about $70 billion of revenue a year paid to companies that handle all of the kind of back-end payments and reconciliation, right? There's 18 systems you got to plug it into. Everyone has to talk to each other. It's very manual. These companies tend to have 15 or 20% margin. We have a company competing with them that has 60% margin now and that has actually bought and tripled the margin of things. Or I'll give you another one, healthcare billing. There's $280 billion spent in the economy each year. That's a lot of money on healthcare billing. 120 billion of that is actually paid as revenue to companies doing it for you. 160 of it is internal. The systems here, they have all things themselves internally. And that's also a 15 to 25% margin business. There's also at least 2 businesses I know of there at scale doing over 50% margins, and they're doing it with AI and to break in. So you have this all over the economy where you're actually competing directly.
No, we had a great interview with Robert Smith, the Holy Grail of Investing podcast. Tony and I did, and we talked about how software companies are actually being disintermediated by software. So even the companies that they have, they're concerned on some of them that literally they are not adjusting fast enough to what the customer's needs are. So the customer's actually building it themselves. And that obviously disintermediates them. Yep. So that's
I think that's right. I think the really simple SaaS companies you're just going to redo with the AI. I think the more advanced SaaS companies that are going to benefit from AI because they own infrastructure they can use to create AI on top of. So it's going to be a bipartite distribution. Some of these are going to get crushed. Some of these are going to do much better because of AI.
And that's somebody earlier today, I can't remember who it was, but they talked about how many professional services companies and other things are going to be really, really changed and threatened by AI simply because there's just so many things that can do what they do.
It's a big question for the Indian economy, actually. The 5 super giant, obviously, service companies, Infosys, et cetera, those guys. And the question is, how much are you going to need? Hundreds of thousands of bodies for some of these things. In some cases, the high-end ones might even be able to do more, but it's going to be tough, I think, for the long tail of those.
Right.
That's right.
So you've emphasized, obviously, power and energy, is, the core building block for it. But why is that constraint so underappreciated? How important is it that we win this AI race that we obviously have to win?
And this is where I think you can go back to Dario, that I think there is something true here where even, I don't believe it's the whole existential thing, I don't believe it's a new God or whatever, but I do think you're going to have the equivalent of thousands of very high IQ actors that you have access to if you get there. And if you get there first, it's geopolitically extremely relevant, right? So if you can imagine the bad guys having that versus, using it against you, that's probably not very good for us. I don't know how much we want to go into warfare here. So a lot of I do a lot. We build a lot of these defense companies we talked about, and we talk about sea and land and air and cyber. And those are like the traditional ones, cyber being newer. Like the fifth one you might call is cognitive, and there's all these ways in which you can basically strategically map out all the information about people in a country and figure out how to influence them and how to influence their culture and influence decisions they make. And if you're really, really smart, it turns out you can do that very effectively against another culture. China has an official branch of their military that does this and tries to figure it out. If that's going to be powered by a huge number of the smartest entities, that's actually really scary if they get it first. And there's a lot of other versions of this. So there's just probably lots of ways of conducting warfare, whether it's in the biological world, whether it's other things that they could do to us if they have so much more intelligence before we do. So we probably want to have this before them. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, we need to win this race, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But so when we try to separate substance from storytelling, which obviously is really hard, but what are the clear signals that AI, is really truly core to a business and a high ROI rather than just hype? So when somebody, business owners in the audience, they're trying to decide, okay, what do I invest truly in order to get a good ROI? How do they go about doing that?
So I think, Palantir's had a very strong few years, obviously, and I think a lot of the problems we solved are particularly relevant for this world. And the thing that was, I think the framework that was really helpful there that we're applying is we have what's called our dynamic ontology. And it's an ontology of data, but it's an ontology of processes. And so the lesson from Palantir has been deployed now at a lot of the Fortune 500. And what they do is they'll come in and map out all the data in your organization, which, making sure it talks to each other, make sure you know what it is, and you'll map out all the processes that exist in different parts of your organization. So for any company, whether it's a wealth management or alternative investment firm or whatever else you're doing, you're gonna have a certain number of processes for everything, and it's gonna be a pretty big tree, depending if you're working with a client or making a decision or hiring someone or firing someone. And so what you do is you map out all these processes, and there's certain things where you still definitely want people involved and you need people to be involved, but there's a lot of these things where the computer can now, the agents can now do most of the work for you, or could do most of the work for you with a quick check from a person or whatever it is. And so what you do is, for me, it's all about productivity, and it's all about applying the agents to the areas where you need more productivity, and where that speed or where that accuracy is valuable to you, or where just not having to hire people is valuable to you. And I think you're just seeing this productivity go off the charts in a bunch of areas. It really is. It was a question mark 2 or 3 years ago. Now, if you talk to anyone who analyzes these things, it's definitely real.
Well, you probably don't know this, Joe. Lila's here, obviously, but most of you probably remember when we talked about it, but we did a 5-year strategic partnership with Palantir to effectively overlay machine learning and AI across all of our business. And we did it in anticipation of the book launch because we knew that, there was going to be probably a lot of leads come through the door as a result of the book, and it was either going to be a trickle or a tsunami. And you can plan for a trickle, it's hard to plan for a tsunami. So we had to be prepared for that. So I've seen actually, this, back end, if you will, work to where, and some of you in this room, I'm going to give you a little secret. You are actually communicating for the first 3 or 4 emails actually with Palantir's system.
I'm not supposed to tell them.
I know, that's okay. They're in the room, they're in the know. But so, for the first 3 or 4 times, you actually were getting a personalized response tied to you based on the information that we got from you until such time as it made sense to connect with the team. And then it actually recommended, based on everything we could find out, about what you told us, we would be able to put you with the right person.
I'm trying to have it help me with my email. I don't trust it.
Understandably.
It helps me route it a little bit better.
Yes, indeed. But what that does, though, is you talk about efficiency. And we talk about it so much in our investment management department. We talk about it so much in all of our departments about you have to try to identify where those efficiencies are. But as Ron, our chief operating officer, wherever he is sitting, will tell you, if you don't know what the process is, you can't automate it.
Yeah, exactly. So I did process discovery stuff's pretty fun, actually, for when you look at your own org.
There are very few people that would say process discovery is a lot of fun.
Be honest about what you're actually doing, right?
Yeah, it's scary, actually, because we had to take 42 steps to do something that really should take 4.
That's the thing. Sometimes you do change the process after you map.
Well, exactly. No, we absolutely do. And it's something to where I'm actually going to talk about this because of the fact that you have an amazing podcast that I enjoyed watching in preparation for this called The American Optimist.
Thank you.
And he has some tremendous guests on there. But I have to say the last one, and I'm hoping I pronounce it correctly, Joe Gebbia.
Yeah.
He was co-founder of Airbnb, right?
Started Airbnb.
Great guy. He's now full-time in the government, working for the administration. He was part of effectively Doge, and he stayed on after Elon stopped, right, to continue to make efficient. Just briefly tell the story, because most of the people in the room have heard about the mine, right? They've heard about the mine when people go to retire from the government, how long it takes, and take all the paperwork, literally today, paperwork, and they put it underground in a mine.
Yeah,
Okay?
speaking of mapping processes, that's one of the more comical ones is the giant underground.
But to walk through what he told you on the podcast, just because I think it's fascinating.
It's funny because I'm probably going to remember it about as well as you, but basically it took 6 months to retire, and you didn't really know what you were going to get paid until you got your first check because they couldn't tell you. And the process involved, I mean, by the way, lots of fax machines and other things like that probably shouldn't be used for this anymore, but they actually had to get the papers like printed and stored at the right part of the mine. And I think they even moved them around down there, checking a few things too before you could bring it back up. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all. It was something that maybe made sense if these things had to be really secure for some reason in the 1950s, but is a totally insane thing, and he's got it all digital now. But the thing he really told me, which makes sense, but I hadn't really thought as much about, is pretty much every one of these processes, we were spending hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on consultants who would just always go years over and way over budget, and their incentive was to go over budget, right? The incentives are very powerful. So you have a whole consulting class in DC where I'm sure some of them are good people, but the incentive is to get it wrong, and it take a long time. So we fired a lot of these places, and a lot of what we did is we created the nonprofit for the government, because you're not allowed to hire people for more than like $200-something thousand, and there's a lot of great people who make that, but there's a lot of really talented people who could add something, who make a lot more than that, especially in the alt world. And so, these companies, and so a lot of us, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Joe, and I, and others, donated a bunch of money to the nonprofit. And there's a law where it lets you do this, where Joe hires these people for the normal amount, the nonprofit pays them extra, and he has about 30 or 40 like top tier designers. They're going through and just fixing all of the U.S. sites, fixing just a ton of things in government right now, making it all work better, which is kind of neat.
How long did it take them to come up with a solution to digitize that process that normally took 6 months?
I think they figured it out in less than like 2 or 3 months, right? It was pretty fast. I mean, the solution they came up with right away, I think they took them a few months to get the people to let them do it, probably.
Yeah.
Most of the delay is the people allowing you to do things.
Getting the permissions, going off memory as well, getting the permissions and getting everything approved and all that took 2 or 3 months. The actual work it took, basically, to design the system and to implement it and turn it live was 4 days.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Or days.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very different incentive, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different incentive.
People don't realize that a lot of things happening in our government these days is off by like 90 or 99% just because the incentives are all. It's a big thing we got to confront and be honest about.
It is shocking. And so now people can actually know what they're going to get paid before they retire. They can actually do a digital process for them to be able to retire. And it just obviously is so much more efficient and saves taxpayer money, et cetera, et cetera. Those are some of the things that AI, machine learning, in some cases, are able to do and solve for. All right, I'm going to take a breath for a second, and we're going to switch gears. Okay, we'll come back to anything that we need to cover there again. But you're not just investing in companies. You helped start a university. What compelled you to build the University of Austin from scratch?
All right. I'm going to offend. Fortunately, it's Houston, so I guess I'm safe here. It's a safe place for me.
There's people all over the world.
I know.
So offend somebody. It's okay.
I'll offend some of you. Listen, obviously we hire a lot of people the last 20 years from the top Ivy League schools and from all sorts of great schools, and I work with a lot of people in government, and I think our culture, especially for a lot of our best and brightest, is to teach them to be very, very careful not to have opinions, to be very careful of virtue signal, to not be interested in the truth if the truth might bother some people, and what that means is that in our cities and in our government, like we're talking about, you have all these things that are broken and that are wrong. But people just don't think very hard about them because they don't want to offend anyone. And so I think that's actually really dangerous. And to me, it's important. Classical virtues, what our civilization was originally built on, the 4 classical virtues, and there's all of them are important. I think courage is especially important and especially lacking. So the goal is, can we have one of our top universities in this country to not be run by communists and to teach courage? So.
So. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, we're very big about freedom.
I like this guy.
Right? We respect everybody's right to believe what they want to believe. Lisa and I have the Freedom Foundation of Texas. It's a very important part of our family. So we have the right to agree or disagree. the most important thing is we have the right and the freedom to be able to talk about it in all settings.
And that's why the communist thing is important, because there's people on the left and the right, and you disagree, and it's healthy. But when the communists take over these departments, they don't allow people to disagree with them. They lock people out. If you want to study education in the top 100 school, if you want to study sociology, if you want to study, like the list goes on, like you are going to getting one point of view. You're going to learn to hate markets. You're going to learn to be suspicious of business people. You're going to learn to be skeptical of America's history. And by the way, I think there's some things we should learn in debate, for sure. But I think you need to be able to be given both views and be allowed to debate these things. And that's not at all how Harvard works. It's not how Stanford works. It's not how Princeton and Yale work. There's a big problem. And so we want to have a place. And Neil Ferguson, my co-founder, he's one of the great historians in the world. He taught at Oxford and Harvard and Stanford. And Barry Weiss, my other co-founder, created the Free Press, is doing really important work in our country as well. And when we announced this, we had 5,000 professors apply. 5,000 professors apply from a lot of top schools, from everywhere. And people don't realize a lot of these professors, who are mostly creative, mostly various sorts of moderate people, they're afraid to speak up where they are. They're terrified. They're attacked by the crazy people at their school. So there's really a need and really a gap here, I think. And it's tough for people to admit their alma mater is being run by people that are a little bit crazy, but they really are in most cases. So we wanted to have another option.
That's great. Well, you obviously get to start from zero, which means you get the rare opportunity to design intentionally. So how do you go about building a university? I mean, you've got governance, faculty, curriculum, incentives, from the ground up, and you have to be thoughtful because you don't want to potentially have it become something that's not consistent with what your founder is.
No, you need to be able to pursue truth and have an open culture and debate. We have a constitution, which is rare for a university. We thought that was a good model to copy from the U.S. to have something to appeal to there. And it's actually kind of nice because a lot of times the board's afraid to go along with something controversial. But then you can say, even though this is controversial, we have free speech in our constitution. We're not gonna say no. We recruited some really top students. We have great professors in all sorts of areas. We have a great STEM side. We have a great side of the intellectual foundation of the West. You basically want students to appreciate the great debates of the last 1,000 years and where our traditions come from. If you ask, I think, what is the foundation of our exceptional civilization here, I think there's really 3 things you have that you have to all learn if you want to understand our civilization. One is the classical world and classical virtues and his history there with Rome and Greece and everything. I think 2 is our Judeo-Christian heritage and how Christianity shaped the West. I think that's really critical to appreciate that and a lot of the wisdom from that and how it differentiated us from Rome and from other civilizations. And then 3 is the Enlightenment and understanding the values of the Enlightenment and understanding how Locke and Hume and all these other people kind of shaped a fertile ground that kind of led to our founders being able to create the Constitution. I think if you don't have all 3 of those, you don't get America. And I think if you don't appreciate all of those, I think AI is going to change the world dramatically the next 20, 30 years. A lot of things are going to be different, but I don't think that means that philosophically we don't need to have the same understanding of these values that made us great. Because if we don't have those, then we're not going to know how to make sure we keep the things we need to keep as the world's changing.
You're a business person, so obviously anytime we get involved in something, you get involved in something, there has to be a definition of success. So, when you look 10 or 20 years out, what does success look like? How do you know that you've declared victory?
I think the longer term goal is to have massive influence and force the other schools to be more like us. I think the way you do this is you steal away all the very top talent from the other top 20 Ivy Leagues and make it a place where they're much more successful.
We like big, hairy, audacious goals.
We have. This couldn't have been done 15 years ago, but I have over 100 friends who are like in our talent network who've started big unicorns and who are helping us, and a lot of these guys are already hiring. Peter Thiel already stole away 3 of my students. Actually, he's hired full time. So even though we only have 2 classes, which I guess is good for the students, but we have a lot of people helping us, and I think we'll see what we can do. But it gets better every year. You guys, if you go to Austin, please come by and check it out.
Very, very good. We're going to zoom back out to focus on a theme that I mentioned earlier that we're excited about for our personal money. How do AI, defense, space, energy, and critical minerals fit together in a strategic landscape, and why do they matter more today than they have in the past?
I feel like this is like a quiz here. It's tough. I had to study ahead of time. It's funny. I personally don't do a lot in the critical minerals area, but they feed a lot of our defense industrial base. And so, originally I was a computer scientist, and we started Palantir, and we weren't really working in manufacturing at all. It wasn't the thing you did in Silicon Valley. It was very expensive. It seems like a weird thing to have to do. And it just turned out that obviously our industrial base has really rotted away, unfortunately. The last 15 years, we've outsourced a lot of it. And this is especially problematic for defense. It's especially even more problematic. So thanks to AI, you have all these autonomous systems.
I want to go to sleep.